The smell of fresh coffee and grilled bacon filled the air at Rosie's Diner, a small roadside restaurant that had been serving travelers for over 30 years. The red vinyl booths were patched in places, and the checkered floor tiles showed their age, but the food was honest and the prices were fair. That's all that mattered to the people who stopped by. It was a Tuesday evening and the dinner rush was winding down. Most of the tables were empty now, just a few regulars finishing their meals and chatting quietly. The sun was setting outside, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple through the large windows that faced the highway. Behind the counter, a young woman in her late 20s wiped down the coffee maker for what felt like the 100th time that day. Her name tag read Amy in faded letters. She had pulled her brown hair back into a ponytail that morning, but loose strands now fell around her tired face. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of too many late nights and early mornings. She had been working double shifts for months now, picking up every extra hour she could get. Amy's feet ached in her worn-out sneakers. The non-slip soles were practically smooth now, and she made a mental note to buy new ones when she got paid. If there was anything left after this month's bills, that is. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Just 2 more hours until closing. Then she could go home, kiss her little girl goodnight, and maybe catch a few hours of sleep before starting all over again tomorrow. The bell above the door chimed, pulling Amy from her thoughts. She looked up and felt her stomach drop slightly. A group of bikers was walking in, their heavy boots thudding against the floor. 5 of them, all wearing leather vests covered in patches and pins, the kind of group that demanded attention whether they wanted it or not. The leader was impossible to miss. He was a massive man, easily over 6 feet tall and built like a bear. His arms were covered in dark tattoos that stretched up to his neck. A thick beard covered half his face and a bandana wrapped around his head. He had the kind of presence that made a room feel smaller just by walking into it. His crew followed behind him, laughing loudly at something one of them had said. They made their way to the corner booth, the biggest one in the diner, and settled in with the confidence of people who were used to taking up space. The other customers glanced over nervously, then quickly looked away, focusing intently on their plates. Amy took a deep breath and grabbed her notepad. This was part of the job. She had dealt with difficult customers before. She could handle this. She walked over to their table, forcing her tired face into a professional smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Rosie's. Can I start you off with something to drink?" The leader looked up at her slowly, his eyes traveling from her shoes to her face in a way that made her skin crawl. He leaned back in the booth, spreading his arms across the back of the seat like he owned the place. "Well, well, look what we got here, boys." His voice was rough, like gravel in a blender. "You got any cold beer in this dump, sweetheart?" Amy kept her smile in place, though it felt more like a mask now. "We have a few options. We've got domestic bottles, and we also have—" "I didn't ask for your life story, darling. Just bring me whatever's coldest, and make it snappy. We've been riding all day, and I'm thirsty enough to drink the ocean." The other bikers laughed at that, slapping the table. Amy nodded and wrote it down. "Of course. And for everyone else?" They rattled off their orders, barely looking at her, talking over each other and making crude jokes. Amy wrote everything down carefully, double-checking to make sure she got it right. The last thing she wanted was to give them a reason to complain. "I'll have those drinks right out for you." She turned to walk away, but the leader's voice stopped her. "Hey, where you going so fast?" "We ain't done yet." Amy turned back, her heart beating a little faster now. "I'm sorry. Did you need something else?" "Yeah, I need you to smile like you mean it. You look like someone died. We're customers, ain't we? Show some appreciation." The other men laughed again, and Amy felt heat rising to her cheeks. She forced her smile wider, hating every second of it. "Of course. I apologize. I'll be right back with your drinks." This time, when she turned away, no one stopped her. She walked quickly to the kitchen area, her hands shaking slightly as she pushed through the swinging door. The cook, an older man named Pete, who had worked at the diner longer than Amy had been alive, looked up from the grill. "You okay, kid?" Amy nodded, not trusting her voice. She grabbed a tray and started filling it with bottles from the cooler. Her manager, a thin man in his 40s named Dale, was in his small office at the back, door closed as usual. She could see him through the window, staring at his computer screen. He wouldn't be any help even if she asked. She loaded up the tray and carried it back out. The bikers were louder now, their voices carrying across the quiet diner. Amy approached the table and started setting down the bottles. "Here you go. One cold beer for you and—" "What the hell is this?" The leader picked up his bottle, looking at it like she had handed him poison. "I said I wanted it cold." "This ain't cold enough," Amy blinked. She had just taken it from the cooler. It was definitely cold. "I'm sorry, sir. That came straight from— Are you arguing with me?" He cut her off, his voice rising. "I know what cold feels like, and this ain't it. You trying to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about?" "No, sir. Not at all. I can get you a different one if you'd like. Maybe with some ice." He stared at her for a long moment, and she could feel the other customers watching now, though none of them said anything. Finally, he waved his hand dismissively. "Nah, forget it. I'll drink it, but you better hope the food is better than the service." Amy nodded quickly and retreated to put in their food order. Her hands were really shaking now. She had dealt with rude customers before, but something about this group felt different, more aggressive, more unpredictable. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. Amy checked on her other tables, refilled coffee cups, and brought out orders, all while keeping one eye on the corner booth. The bikers were getting louder with each beer, their jokes getting cruder and their laughter more raucous. When their food was ready, Amy carried it out on a large tray. Burgers, fries, onion rings, all piled high and steaming. She approached the table carefully, trying to remember who ordered what. "All right, I've got the bacon burger with extra cheese." She started setting down plates, but the leader suddenly shifted in his seat, bumping the table. Amy's hand wobbled, and a few fries fell off one of the plates onto the table. "Are you kidding me?" The leader's voice boomed across the diner. "Look at this. She's throwing food all over the place." "I'm so sorry. Let me clean that up and get you a fresh—" "You know what your problem is?" He leaned forward, his eyes hard. "You're clumsy. And you're slow. And honestly, I don't know why they even hired you. You clearly can't handle this job." Amy felt like she'd been slapped. Her face burned with embarrassment. She could feel every eye in the diner on her now. "Sir, I apologize. Let me make this right." She reached across to pick up the fallen fries, but as she did, the leader deliberately knocked his water glass with his elbow. It tipped over and cold water rushed across the table, splashing onto Amy's uniform and dripping onto the floor. "Oops," he said, smirking. "Look at that. Now there's a mess. Better clean it up, sweetheart. That's what you're here for, right? Cleaning up messes?" His crew erupted in laughter, and Amy felt tears stinging her eyes. She grabbed napkins from her apron, trying to soak up the water, her vision blurring. This wasn't fair. She had done nothing to deserve this. She was just trying to do her job, trying to earn money to take care of her daughter. "You missed a spot," one of the other bikers said. Pointing and laughing, Amy bent down to wipe the floor, her cheeks wet now, and she heard the leader say something else, something crude about her appearance that made the whole group laugh even harder. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to stand up and walk out and never come back. But she couldn't. She needed this job. She needed every dollar. The other customers looked uncomfortable but said nothing. An elderly couple in a nearby booth looked down at their plates. A businessman in a suit suddenly became very interested in his phone. Even Pete, visible through the kitchen window, turned away, and Dale's office door remained firmly closed. Amy finished cleaning up the water, her hands trembling, her face burning with humiliation. She stood up slowly, clutching the wet napkins, trying desperately to hold herself together. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" Her voice was barely a whisper. The leader leaned back again, taking a long drink from his beer, making her wait. Finally, he waved his hand dismissively. "Nah, I think we're good. For now." Amy nodded and turned away, walking quickly toward the kitchen before the tears could really start falling. She pushed through the door and leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths, trying to calm down. She couldn't break down. Not here, not now. She still had 2 hours left on her shift. But as she stood there, wiping her eyes and trying to compose herself, she had no idea that someone in the diner had been watching the entire scene unfold. Someone who was about to change everything. In a back booth, partially hidden behind a menu and wearing a simple baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, sat a man who had stopped in for a quiet meal away from the chaos of his usual life. He had been enjoying the anonymity of a small-town diner, the simple pleasure of good food and no cameras. But as he watched what had just happened, his jaw tightened and his hands gripped the edge of the table. He slowly set down his menu, his mind made up. What he was about to do would probably end his quiet evening. But some things were more important than peace and quiet. Some things couldn't be ignored. The diner was about to witness something that would change not just one evening, but the lives of everyone involved in ways nobody could have predicted. Amy stood in the kitchen for a moment, letting the cool air from the walk-in freezer wash over her flushed face. She could still hear the bikers laughing out there, their voices carrying through the walls like they owned the place. Her uniform was damp and sticking to her skin where the water had splashed. She wanted nothing more than to go home, curl up next to her daughter, and forget this night ever happened. But she couldn't. The shift wasn't over. Bills didn't pay themselves. She splashed some cold water on her face at the small sink in the back, careful not to smudge what little makeup she had on. Looking in the cracked mirror hanging on the wall, she barely recognized herself. When had she started looking so worn down? So defeated? She used to be different, confident, strong. But life had a way of grinding you down one day at a time. You don't have to take that, you know. Pete's voice came from behind her. The old cook was flipping burgers, but his eyes were on her, full of concern. I need this job, Pete, you know that. Don't mean you gotta let people treat you like dirt. Amy managed a weak smile. It's fine. I've dealt with worse. She wasn't sure if that was true, but saying it out loud made her feel slightly better. She pushed back through the swinging door into the dining area, forcing herself to stand tall. The bikers were eating now, mostly ignoring her, which was a relief. She made her rounds to the other tables, checking on the elderly couple, refilling the businessman's coffee, making sure everyone had what they needed. But as she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Not the bikers this time. Someone else. She glanced around the diner, her eyes scanning the booths. Most were empty now. The evening crowd had thinned out even more. Then her gaze landed on the back booth, the one in the corner near the old jukebox that hadn't worked in years. There was a man sitting there alone. She hadn't really noticed him before, which was strange because the diner wasn't that big. He must have come in during the earlier rush and just blended into the background. He wore a simple gray baseball cap pulled low, dark sunglasses even though it was evening, and a plain black t-shirt. His shoulders were broad, filling out the booth, and he sat with a stillness that was almost unusual. Like he was used to being looked at, and had learned how to make himself invisible when he wanted to be. A half-eaten burger sat on his plate, and a glass of iced tea sweated condensation onto the table. But he wasn't eating anymore. He was just sitting there, very still, watching. Not in a creepy way, but with an intensity that made Amy's skin prickle with awareness. Their eyes met for just a second before Amy looked away quickly. She didn't need any more complications tonight. She just needed to get through the next hour and a half. She walked over to the register to process a check for the businessman, who was getting ready to leave. As he paid, she heard another burst of laughter from the corner booth. Her stomach tightened. The leader of the biker group was waving his hand in the air, beckoning her over. Amy took a breath and walked to their table. Yes, sir? Can I get you anything else? Yeah, you can tell me something. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table. Do they not teach manners where you come from? Because your service tonight has been pretty pathetic. Amy felt her face flush again. I apologize if I've disappointed you. Is there something specific I can... Specific? He cut her off. How about everything? The beer wasn't cold enough. The food took forever, and you got water all over the place like some kind of amateur. His crew snickered at that. Sir, you knocked the water over yourself. I was just... Are you calling me a liar? His voice got louder, more aggressive. The few remaining customers in the diner went quiet, the whole place holding its breath. Amy's hand started shaking again. No, sir. I'm not calling you anything. I'm just trying to do my job. Well, you're doing a terrible job of it. You know what I think? I think you don't deserve to work here. I think you should find a different line of work. Something more suited to your talents. The way he said that last word made it sound dirty, and his crew laughed right on cue. Tears threatened again, but Amy blinked them back. She would not cry in front of these people again. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Is there anything else you need, or can I bring you your check? Her voice was steadier than she felt. The leader smiled, a mean expression that didn't reach his eyes. Oh, we'll let you know when we're ready for the check, sweetheart. We might be here a while. We're in no hurry. He paused, then added, unless you want to try and kick us out. That what you want to do? Amy knew a trap when she heard one. "No, sir. Take your time." She turned to walk away, her chest tight, her throat burning with unshed tears. Why was this happening? What had she done to deserve this? She was just trying to make a living. Just trying to take care of her little girl who was home right now with the neighbor. Probably already asleep with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. As Amy passed by the back booth, something unexpected happened. The man in the baseball cap moved. It was a small movement, just a shift of his weight, but something about it made Amy pause. He reached up slowly and took off his sunglasses, folding them carefully and setting them on the table. Even in the dim light of the diner, Amy could see his eyes. They were intense, focused, and right now they weren't looking at her. They were looking at the corner booth where the bikers sat, and the expression on his face was something Amy had never seen before. Not anger exactly, something colder, something more controlled. The man's jaw was set tight, the muscles working. His hands, which had been resting calmly on the table, were now gripping the edge, knuckles slightly white. He looked like someone who had just made a decision and was gathering himself to act on it. Amy didn't know why, but she found herself pausing, watching him. There was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite place. Had she seen him before? Maybe on TV, in a movie? But that seemed ridiculous. What would someone famous be doing in a rundown diner in the middle of nowhere? The man took a slow breath, then reached up and removed his baseball cap, setting it next to the sunglasses. And that's when Amy's breath caught in her throat. She knew that face. Everyone knew that face. The broad jaw, the raised eyebrow, the distinctive features that had been on movie posters and magazine covers for years. It was impossible, but it was true. Sitting in the back booth of Rosie's Diner, dressed like any other traveler, was Dwayne Johnson. The Rock. One of the biggest movie stars in the world. Amy's mind raced. What was he doing here? Why hadn't she recognized him before? And more importantly, why did he look like he was about to do something? The Rock stood up slowly, and Amy was reminded just how tall he was. He had to be at least 6'4", maybe more, and his shoulders seemed to stretch forever. Even in a simple t-shirt and jeans, there was no mistaking the physical presence of someone who had spent years as a professional wrestler and action star. But it wasn't his size that filled the room. It was something else, an energy, an authority, the kind of presence that made people stop and pay attention without understanding why. The businessman who had been halfway to the door paused and turned around. The elderly couple looked up from their dessert. Even Pete stuck his head out from the kitchen, sensing something was happening. The bikers hadn't noticed yet. They were still laughing and talking, riding high on the power they thought they had. The leader was in the middle of another crude joke, his crew hanging on every word. The Rock walked forward with measured steps. Not fast, not slow. Just steady and purposeful. Each step seemed to echo in the sudden quiet of the diner. He walked past Amy, and as he did, he gave her the briefest glance. His eyes were kind, reassuring somehow, as if to say, "It's okay. I've got this." Amy found herself frozen in place, holding her empty tray, unable to look away from what was unfolding. The Rock reached the corner booth just as the leader finished his joke. He stood there for a moment just behind the leader's shoulder, waiting. The rest of the crew noticed him first. Their laughter died away, their eyes going wide. One by one, they fell silent, staring up at this massive figure who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. The leader sensed the change in his crew and turned his head, annoyed. "What's wrong with you, He stopped mid-sentence as he looked up and saw who was standing there. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then something that might have been fear, though he tried to hide it quickly. The Rock looked down at him, his expression calm but serious. When he spoke, his voice was deep and clear, carrying easily across the now silent diner. It wasn't loud or aggressive. He didn't need to yell. The authority in his tone was enough. "I think you owe the lady an apology." It was a simple statement, just 7 words, but the weight behind them was enormous. The leader blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. What? "You heard me." The Rock's hand came to rest on the back of the booth right next to the leader's shoulder. Not threatening exactly, but definitely there. A reminder of just how large and powerful this man was. "The waitress you've been harassing for the past half hour, I think you need to apologize to her. Look, man, I don't know who you think you are, the leader started, trying to recover some of his swagger. I know exactly who I am, the Rock interrupted, his voice still calm but with an edge now. The question is, do you know who you are? Because from where I've been sitting, you're just a guy who thinks being mean to someone trying to do their job makes you tough. And I gotta tell you, brother, that's not tough. That's weak. The leader's face flushed red. His crew was staring at him now, waiting to see what he would do. The entire diner was watching. This was his moment to either back down or escalate. And everyone knew it. This ain't your business, the leader said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. I'm making it my business, the Rock replied simply. See, I grew up with a single mom who worked 3 jobs. Watched her come home exhausted every night. Watched people treat her like she didn't matter. And I promised myself something back then. He paused, his eyes hard. I promised I'd never let anyone treat someone like that in front of me without saying something. So here I am, saying something. The silence in the diner was absolute. Amy stood frozen, tears streaming down her face now, but different tears. Not tears of humiliation this time. Something else. Something that felt like hope. The leader looked at his crew, then back at the Rock, then over at Amy. He was trapped, and everyone knew it. His shoulders sagged slightly, the fight going out of him. It was just jokes, he muttered, but it sounded hollow even to his own ears. Just jokes? The Rock's eyebrow went up. That signature expression that a million memes had been made from. Was she laughing? Because from where I was sitting, she looked pretty hurt. And if someone's hurting and you're laughing, that's not a joke. That's just cruelty. The words hung in the air like a verdict. The leader had no response to that. No comeback. Nothing. The Rock looked at him for a long moment, then straightened up slightly. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand up, walk over to that lady and give her a real apology. Not because I'm standing here, but because it's the right thing to do. And then you and your crew are going to think real hard about how you treat people. The diner held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The seconds stretched out like hours. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The entire diner seemed frozen in time, waiting to see what the leader of the biker gang would do. He sat there, his face cycling through different shades of red, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Amy could see the wheels turning in his head. He was trying to figure out a way to save face, to not look weak in front of his crew, but there was no good option. Everyone in the room knew it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he pushed himself up from the booth. His movements were slow, reluctant, like every muscle in his body was fighting against what he was about to do. He stood there for a moment, not quite meeting the Rock's eyes, looking somewhere over his shoulder instead. Fine, he muttered, the word barely audible. I'm sorry. What was that? The Rock's voice wasn't mocking, but it was firm. I didn't quite hear you. The leader's jaw clenched. I said fine. I'll apologize. Good. The Rock stepped back slightly, giving him room to move. Take your time. Do it right. The leader shuffled toward Amy, his boots scuffing against the floor. His crew watched him go, their faces a mixture of shock and embarrassment. This wasn't how their night was supposed to go. They had come in here expecting to have some laughs, push around a waitress who couldn't fight back, and leave feeling big and powerful. Instead, they were watching their leader get schooled by a movie star in the middle of a small-town diner. When the leader reached Amy, he stopped a few feet away, keeping his distance. He looked at her briefly, then looked away, focusing on a spot somewhere above her head. Look, I'm sorry, all right? For the water thing and whatever. The words came out flat, mechanical, like he was reading from a script he didn't believe in. Amy stood there, still holding her tray, not sure what to say. Part of her wanted to accept it and just let this whole nightmare end. But another part of her, a part she had forgotten existed, felt angry. This wasn't an apology. This was just more disrespect wrapped in different words. Before she could respond, the Rock's voice cut through the tension. That's not an apology. The leader spun around, his frustration finally boiling over. What do you want from me, man? I said I was sorry. No. The Rock walked closer, his presence somehow growing even larger. You said words. But saying words isn't the same as meaning them. You didn't look her in the eye. You didn't acknowledge what you actually did. You just wanted to get this over with so you could go back to your table and pretend this never happened. The Rock stopped right next to the leader, and the size difference was stark. The biker was a big man, but the Rock towered over him. his shoulders broader, his frame more imposing. Yet despite his physical advantage, the Rock's voice remained calm, almost gentle. "Let me tell you something about respect," the Rock continued, and now he wasn't just talking to the leader. He was talking to everyone in the diner. Real respect isn't about who's bigger or louder or tougher. It's about recognizing that the person in front of you is a human being with feelings, with struggles, with a life that matters just as much as yours. He gestured toward Amy. "This woman here has been working all day. Look at her. Really look at her. She's exhausted. Her feet probably hurt. She's got stains on her uniform from where you deliberately spilled water on her. And you know what? She's still here. Still standing. Still trying to do her job with dignity." Amy felt fresh tears rolling down her cheeks, but these were different. Someone was actually seeing her, actually acknowledging everything she'd been going through. When was the last time anyone had done that? The Rock turned back to the leader. "She's tougher than you'll ever be. Because real toughness isn't about intimidating people who can't fight back. Real toughness is showing up every day when life is hard, when you're tired, when things aren't fair, and doing what needs to be done anyway. That's courage. That's strength." The diner was completely silent. The elderly couple in the booth had tears in their eyes. Pete had come out from the kitchen and was leaning against the counter, his arms crossed, nodding slowly. Even Dale had emerged from his office, standing in the doorway looking ashamed. The leader stood there, and something in his posture changed. His shoulders dropped. His head lowered. The defensive anger seemed to drain out of him, replaced by something else. Shame, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. He stopped, cleared his throat, tried again. "I didn't think about it like that." "I know you didn't," the Rock said, and his voice was gentler now. "That's the problem. You didn't think. You just did what you wanted without considering how it would affect another person." The leader finally looked at Amy, really looked at her this time. He saw the tears, the exhaustion, the hurt. He saw her as a person, maybe for the first time all evening. "I'm sorry," he said, and this time his voice was different. Quieter, more genuine. "I'm really sorry. What I did was wrong. The jokes, the water, all of it. You didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that." Amy swallowed hard, not trusting her voice. She nodded slowly. "Thank you," she managed to whisper. The leader nodded back, then started to turn away, but the Rock held up a hand. "Hold on, we're not quite done here." The leader looked confused. "What else do you want?" "I want you to understand something." The Rock pulled out his wallet from his back pocket. "An apology is a good start, but sometimes we need to back up our words with actions. Show that we're serious about making things right." He pulled out a crisp $100 bill and handed it to Amy. "This is for my meal," he said with a warm smile. "Keep the change. You've earned it just by putting up with this nonsense tonight." Amy stared at the bill in shock. His meal had been maybe $12. "Sir, I can't accept—" "Yes, you can," the Rock said firmly but kindly. "And you will. Consider it a thank you for your hard work and your patience." Then he turned to the leader and his crew. "Now I think these gentlemen would like to show that they're serious about their apology too. Right?" The leader blinked, caught off guard. "You want us to—" "I want you to do the right thing," the Rock said simply. "You caused her distress. You made her job harder. You disrespected her. Actions have consequences, so show her that you understand that. Show her that your apology means something." The crew members looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, one of them, a younger guy with a skull tattoo on his neck, pulled out his wallet and placed a 20 on Amy's tray. "I'm sorry too," he said quietly. "What we did wasn't cool." That seemed to break the dam. Another crew member added $30, then another. They didn't have much, judging by the worn bills and the way they counted their money carefully, but they each contributed something. The leader watched his crew, then reached for his own wallet. He pulled out several bills. Amy couldn't see exactly how much, and added them to the pile on her tray. "This doesn't make it okay," he said. "I know that, but I want you to know that I hear what he's saying." He gestured toward the Rock. "And I'm going to think about it." Amy looked down at her tray, at the money piled there. It was more than she usually made in tips for an entire week. Her hands trembled as reality set in. This was actually happening. This wasn't a dream. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "All of you. Thank you." The Rock smiled at her, that famous smile that had charmed millions of people around the world. But in this moment, in this small diner, it wasn't the smile of a celebrity. It was the smile of one human being showing kindness to another. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "You were handling yourself with grace and dignity even before I stepped in. I just reminded everyone else in the room to treat you with the respect you deserve." He turned back to the group of bikers. "Now, I want you all to do something for me. I want you to come back here next week. Same day, same time." The leader looked wary. "Why?" "Because I want you to apologize again. Not because you have to, but because you want to. I want you to spend this week thinking about what happened here tonight. Really thinking about it, about how you treat people, about what kind of man you want to be. And then I want you to come back and show this lady that you've actually learned something." "And if we don't?" one of the crew members asked, trying to sound tough but failing. The Rock's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes grew harder. "Then you'll have to live with the knowledge that you had a chance to be better and chose not to take it. And trust me, that's a heavier weight than you think." The bikers nodded slowly, absorbing his words. The leader extended his hand toward the Rock. "Deal." The Rock shook his hand firmly. "Good. Now I think you gentlemen should probably head out. Give everyone here some peace." The bikers didn't need to be told twice. They gathered their things, left money on the table for their meal plus extra, and headed toward the door. As they passed Amy, each one mumbled another apology or a simple sorry. The leader paused at the door, looked back at her one more time, nodded, and then they were gone. The rumble of their motorcycles faded into the distance. The moment they left, the tension in the diner broke like a wave. The elderly couple started clapping. The businessman, who had stayed to watch the whole thing, joined in. Pete whistled and whooped from behind the counter. Even Dale clapped, though he had the decency to look embarrassed about his absence during the confrontation. Amy stood there in the middle of it all, tears streaming freely now, clutching her tray with its pile of bills, and feeling something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt valued. She felt seen. She felt like she mattered. The Rock walked back to his booth, picked up his baseball cap and sunglasses, and prepared to leave. But Amy followed him, her heart pounding. "Wait," she called out. "Please wait." He turned, raising an eyebrow. "Yes?" Amy didn't know what to say. "How do you thank someone for something like this? How do you put into words what it meant to have someone stand up for you when you'd felt so small and helpless?" I need you to know." She struggled to find the words. "I have a daughter. She's 5 years old, and she's sick. Really sick. I've been working double shifts for months trying to pay for her treatments. Tonight I was so tired, and when those guys came in and started..." She stopped, took a breath. "What you did tonight, standing up for me like that, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That I'm not alone. That there are still good people in the world. That kindness still exists." The Rock's expression softened. "What's your daughter's name?" "Lily. Her name is Lily. That's a beautiful name." He paused, seeming to consider something. "Can I ask what's wrong with her?" Amy explained about Lily's condition, the expensive treatments, the mounting medical bills that never seemed to stop coming. The Rock listened carefully, asking questions, genuinely interested. When she finished, he pulled out his phone. "I want to help," he said simply. "You've already helped more than you know," Amy protested. "No, I mean really help." He was typing something on his phone, his fingers moving quickly. "I have some resources, some connections, and I'd like to use them to make sure your daughter gets the care she needs." Amy felt her knees go weak. "I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering." He looked up from his phone and met her eyes. "I've been blessed with success in my life, more than I ever dreamed possible. But that success is meaningless if I don't use it to help people who need it. So please let me do this. For Lily and for you." Amy couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears falling harder now, and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much." The Rock smiled and went back to his phone. "Give me your contact information. My team will reach out to you tomorrow. We'll figure out what Lily needs and make it happen." As Amy gave him her information, she felt like she was floating. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. But it was real. The money on her tray was real. The kindness in this man's eyes was real. The hope blooming in her chest was real. After a few more minutes, The Rock put his phone away and picked up his things. "I should get going. Long drive ahead of me. Can I tell people about this?" Amy asked suddenly. About what you did? He considered for a moment, then shrugged. Tell whoever you want. But I didn't do this for publicity. I did it because it was right. And honestly, you're the hero of this story, not me. You showed up tonight even though you were exhausted. You kept your dignity even when people tried to take it from you. You're strong, Amy. Don't ever forget that. He headed for the door and Amy watched him go, this larger-than-life figure who had walked into her ordinary night and changed everything. At the door, he paused and looked back one more time. And Amy, tell Lily that The Rock says she's the people's champion, and champions always win their fights. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night, leaving behind a diner full of people who had just witnessed something extraordinary, something that reminded them that heroes were real, that kindness mattered, and that standing up for what's right could change someone's entire world. Amy looked down at the money on her tray, then at Pete, who was grinning at her, then at the elderly couple who were still wiping tears from their eyes. She thought about Lily at home, asleep with her stuffed rabbit, and about the phone call that would come tomorrow, and about how her daughter would get the care she needed. And for the first time in months, Amy smiled a real smile. Not the fake one she put on for customers, not the tired one she showed Lily so she wouldn't worry. A real, genuine smile of hope and gratitude. The night had started as one of the worst of her life. But somewhere along the way, it had transformed into something else entirely, something she would remember forever, something that proved that even in the darkest moments, light could break through in the most unexpected ways. Amy barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she replayed what had happened at the diner. The humiliation, the fear, and then The Rock, standing up for her like some kind of guardian angel in a baseball cap. It all felt like a fever dream, something her exhausted mind had conjured up to cope with a terrible shift. But when she woke up the next morning and counted the money on her nightstand, she knew it had been real. $347 in tips from one night, more than she usually made in a week and a half. She held the bills in her hands, feeling their weight, their reality, and tears started flowing again. Lily was still asleep in the small bedroom they shared, her breathing soft and steady. Amy walked over and kissed her daughter's forehead, brushing back the blonde hair that had started growing back after the last round of treatments. Lily stirred slightly but didn't wake up. Things are going to get better, baby, Amy whispered. I promise. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. An unknown number. Amy's heart jumped. Could it be? She answered nervously. Hello? Good morning, is this Amy? The voice was professional, warm, female. My name is Christina, and I'm calling from The Rock's management team. He asked me to reach out to you regarding your daughter's medical situation. Amy's hand flew to her mouth. It was real, all of it. Yes, this is Amy. Wonderful. Mr. Johnson explained your situation to us last night and we'd like to help. Can you tell me more about Lily's condition and what treatments she needs? For the next 20 minutes, Amy explained everything. The diagnosis that had come out of nowhere 8 months ago. The treatments that insurance only partially covered. The specialist appointments that cost hundreds of dollars each. The medications that ate up most of her paycheck. Christina listened carefully, asking questions, taking notes. Okay, I think we have a good understanding of the situation, Christina said when Amy finished. Here's what we're going to do. Mr. Johnson would like to cover all of Lily's medical expenses going forward. We'll coordinate directly with the hospital and her doctors. You won't have to worry about bills anymore. Amy couldn't breathe. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just focus on taking care of your daughter. We'll handle the rest. I'll send you some paperwork to sign and we'll need contact information for Lily's medical team. But after that, everything will be taken care of. When the call ended, Amy sat on the edge of her bed staring at her phone, unable to process what had just happened. Her daughter was going to get the care she needed. The crushing weight of medical debt that had been suffocating her for months was just gone. Lifted away by one act of kindness from a stranger. She thought about calling her mother, her sister, her best friend, but instead she just sat there letting it sink in. Sometimes miracles were quiet things that happened over a phone call on a Wednesday morning, while your daughter slept peacefully in the next room. Meanwhile, across town, the leader of the biker gang was having a very different morning. His name was Frank, though most people called him Tank, and he was sitting at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold in front of him. He hadn't slept much either. The guys had been quiet on the ride home last night. Nobody wanted to talk about what happened. They'd split up at the usual corner, each heading to their own place, and Tank had gone home to his small apartment above the auto shop where he worked. He kept replaying The Rock's words in his head. Real toughness is showing up every day when life is hard, when you're tired, when things aren't fair, and doing what needs to be done anyway. Tank had spent most of his adult life thinking toughness meant something else. It meant not backing down. It meant making sure people knew you weren't someone to mess with. It meant projecting strength even if you had to do it by making someone else feel small. But last night he'd seen real strength. That waitress Amy, still standing tall even after everything he'd put her through, still doing her job, still showing up. And The Rock, who could have destroyed him physically without breaking a sweat, choosing instead to teach him something, showing him that real power was about lifting people up, not tearing them down. Tank looked at his reflection in the dark screen of his phone. When had he become the kind of guy who bullied waitresses? His mother would be ashamed if she knew. She'd raised him better than that. She'd worked as a waitress herself for years before she got sick. The thought hit him like a punch to the gut. His mother had been a waitress. How many times had she come home exhausted telling stories about difficult customers? How many times had she cried in the bathroom because someone had been cruel to her? And here he was, doing the same thing to someone else's mother, someone else's daughter. He picked up his phone and opened a notes app, typing slowly with his thick fingers. Things I need to think about. He stared at the blank screen, then started writing. About respect, about how he treated people, about the man he'd become and whether that was the man he wanted to be. By the time the sun came up, Tank had filled several pages with thoughts and realizations that made him uncomfortable. But The Rock had been right about one thing. He needed to come back to that diner. He needed to show that his apology meant something. The next few days passed in a strange blur for Amy. True to her word, Christina called back with updates. The hospital had been contacted. Lily's bills were being paid. Better yet, they'd arranged for Lily to see a specialist at a research hospital 3 hours away, someone who had experience with cases like hers. Amy's co-workers at the diner treated her differently now. Word had spread about what happened that night. Pete kept giving her the best sections and making sure she got first pick of shifts. Even Dale, who'd hidden in his office during the whole incident, seemed more attentive, checking in on her regularly. I should have been out there, Dale admitted one afternoon when the lunch rush had ended. I should have stood up for you. I was scared and I took the coward's way out. I'm sorry. Amy appreciated the apology, but she could see the shame in his eyes. What matters is what we do going forward, she said, echoing something The Rock had told the bikers. Dale nodded and announced a new policy. Any customer who was abusive to staff would be asked to leave immediately. No exceptions. It should have been policy all along, but better late than never. The story started spreading beyond the diner, too. One of the customers that night had recorded part of the confrontation on their phone. By Thursday, a short video was circulating on social media. It didn't show Amy's humiliation, thank God. Just The Rock standing up for her and talking about respect. The video went viral. By Friday, news outlets were calling the diner wanting to interview Amy. She declined most of them. This wasn't about fame or attention. It was personal, something that had happened to her on the worst night of her life, and she didn't want to turn it into entertainment. But she did agree to one interview with a local news station, because she wanted to say something important. She wanted to thank The Rock publicly, yes, but more than that. She wanted to talk about the millions of service workers who dealt with difficult customers every single day. People who were just trying to make a living and deserved to be treated with basic human decency. We're not servants, she said to the camera, her voice steady and clear. We're people. We have families, dreams, struggles just like everyone else, and we deserve respect, every single one of us. The interview aired on Saturday evening. By Sunday morning, it had been shared thousands of times. People were talking about it. Restaurant workers across the country were sharing their own stories of being mistreated. The conversation was growing. But the most important thing happened on Tuesday evening, exactly 1 week after the incident. Amy was working her usual shift when she heard the familiar rumble of motorcycles outside. Her heart jumped into her throat. They were back. The bikers were back. Pete noticed her tense up. You want me to handle this? Amy took a deep breath. No, let's see what they want. The door opened and Tank walked in, followed by his crew. They looked different somehow. Cleaner, maybe. More humble. Tank had shaved his beard into something neater, and his shirt looked freshly washed. The diner went quiet as everyone recognized them. The other customers watched nervously, waiting to see what would happen. Tank walked straight to Amy, his crew hanging back by the door. When he reached her, he did something unexpected. He took off his sunglasses and looked directly at her, meeting her eyes. "I came back like I promised," he said. His voice was quieter than she remembered, less aggressive. "I've been thinking all week about what happened. About what The Rock said. About who I want to be." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I was wrong. Not just about that night, but about a lot of things. The way I treat people, the way I act like being tough means being mean. I've been carrying around this anger for so long that I forgot what it's like to just be decent." Amy listened. Her tray clutched against her chest like a shield. "My mom was a waitress," Tank continued, and his voice cracked slightly. "She died 3 years ago and I never really dealt with it. I just got angrier and harder and pushed people away. But treating you the way I did last week, it made me realize something. My mom would have hated the man I've become. She raised me better than that." Tears were forming in his eyes now. This big, tough biker guy standing in the middle of a diner with tears running down his face. "So I'm here to apologize again. For real this time. Not because anyone's making me, but because I need you to know that I understand what I did was wrong, and I'm going to be better." Amy felt her own eyes welling up. She could see that he meant it. This wasn't the same man who had tormented her a week ago. Something had changed. "Thank you," she said softly. "That takes courage." "Real courage." Tank nodded, wiping his eyes roughly with the back of his hand. Can we get a table? We'd like to have dinner. And I promise we'll be respectful customers." Amy smiled, a genuine smile. "Of course. Right this way." She led them to the same corner booth they'd sat in before. As they settled in, Tank pulled out an envelope from his jacket. "This is for you," he said, handing it to Amy. "It's not much, but my crew and I took up a collection. We want to contribute to your daughter's medical fund." Amy opened the envelope and found $500 inside. She looked up at them in shock. "This is too much." "It's not enough," one of the crew members said, the young guy with the skull tattoo. "Not for what we put you through, but it's what we could manage." "We've also been talking to other riders," another crew member added. "We're organizing a charity ride next month to raise money for families dealing with medical bills. If that's okay with you, we'd like to do it in your daughter's name." Amy couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears flowing freely now. A week ago, these men had been her tormentors. Now they were trying to make things right, not just with words, but with real action. Throughout dinner, the bikers were model customers. They said please and thank you. They didn't make crude jokes. They left a generous tip, and when they got up to leave, Tank stopped by Amy one more time. "I know I can't undo what I did," he said, "but I want you to know that you changed my life. You and The Rock. You showed me that it's never too late to become a better person." After they left, Amy stood in the middle of the diner, surrounded by customers who had witnessed the whole thing. An elderly woman at a nearby booth started clapping.